Welcome to episode 0 of my video essay series. This essay is meant to give an overview to why I create these analyses. It may come across as a little vague. I'm not talking about a particular book or movie or whatever this time. For now, it's just my thoughts, most of which is just me complaining about how people ingest other criticism. I expect to do more essays of this style. After all, I would like for this to be a growing series that covers multiple topics. Anyways, I hope you enjoy this essay and maybe take something away from it. Episode 0. My thoughts on criticism and analysis. I dislike most of the criticism and analysis I see. As a result, I dislike most of the reception that I see to criticism and analysis. One part of this problem of mine rises from two principles, which I label as the principle of the first voice and the principle of the loudest voice. These two principles need more explanation, which I will save for later. On the other hand, another part of my problem comes from the way people apply criticism and analysis. In my view, those making criticism and analyses do so with a dogmatic approach. They use their analysis to direct or dictate. They, once again as it appears to me, limit discussion by relying on the dichotomous mentality of correct or incorrect. For example, if my analysis is correct, then any different analysis is therefore incorrect. Also, for reference, when I say criticism, I refer to the act of assigning value, and when I say analysis, I refer to the analyzing of a subject for whatever means. This means that criticism and analysis overlap, and for the sake of simplicity, I will often refer to either as analysis. I view criticism and analysis as a means of opening new paths of thought, some of which intersect and some of which divert in opposite directions. Analysis should not construct barriers before other paths, directing traffic to just one predetermined road. Whenever I approach a new source, or even an older source which I decide to re-explore, I take a fresh, clean approach. As such, I avoid the typical isms of literary criticism. To me, relying upon an ism not only limits potential analyses that could arise from the initial, but also constitutes a pre-limited mindset. The isms that take a pre-made set of criteria and apply it to a subject. They then see how well this subject aligns with the criteria. With this process, conclusions such as yay or nay come first, and then analysis justifies which conclusion to pick. I simply do not find this style of analysis as fun. I prefer my analyses working forward. Those making criticism or analysis tend, as it appears to me, to purport their analysis as the singular truth. They may approach a subject without prejudice, but afterward they assign the analysis this weight of finality. I will not pretend that I take an unprejudiced view to my own analysis. As a selfish matter, I enjoy my analyses. However, this does not mean that I dismiss all other analyses as inferior. Actually, when I find an analysis bad or wrong, the fault resides in either the purpose or the reception. If an analysis takes a logical approach or logical formation, I give it the benefit of the doubt. After all, I believe that one analysis does not automatically invalidate other analyses. If anything, I want to view a bad analysis within the light of another. Most of the time, I try to use other analyses to augment or enhance my own. Sometimes I begin an analysis process with thoughts of, what about this, or how about this, or with that in mind. These particular phrases may not make it into the final product, but they stay relevant in my mind the way some people might write the subject of an essay in bold letters at the top of an essay's first draft. I may not use these phrases, but I collect the thoughts. Having a mental database of information will benefit anybody. Once, one of my brothers asked me why I continue to read books that I do not enjoy. I told him that even if I dislike a book for whatever reason, I can still learn from the book. I may learn what not to do. I apply this thinking with criticism and analysis, both as the audience and the producer. I do not expect anyone to take my analysis as the final say on the subject. However, I would like for this hypothetical someone to consider my analysis and add it to a database of thoughts and of how thought processes might work. This idea of the mental database relates to my earlier metaphor of opening new paths. I also try to keep my analyses free of my opinion. I try to keep concepts such as good, bad, wrong, and right from my analysis, though I may fail sometimes. Or, if I include my opinion, I try not to make my opinion the pivotal part of my analysis. I may have an analysis that explains how I came to my opinion. I may include my opinion as an example. I try not to use my opinion as part of the formation of the analysis. Instead of saying, this is bad, or I dislike this part, therefore the whole is bad, I tend to say, I think this is bad because of these reasons. Some might see this as a lack of confidence, that I take an ambivalent stance. Some might want the definitive statement stated definitively. I would say this hypothetical someone misunderstood my message. I delineate my opinion from fact. When it comes to the reception of an analysis, I have my own qualms. They start with how the audience tends to incorporate the analysis. The way someone delivers an analysis incorporates half of the analysis's journey. Because of this, I can point some blame toward the audiences. The audience receiving the analysis makes up the other half. I often find that audiences accept analysis too readily. Audiences, as I see them in different forms, take an analysis without question. If they do not accept the analysis, they reject it entirely. This gives the reception of analyses a binary existence. Much like a light switch, the metaphor often used for this example, audiences receive analysis in either an on or an off position. There rarely seems to be any middle ground. Once again, this limits thinking. The critic will declare the subject as the best thing ever or as the worst thing ever. I have qualms about this practice. I think it instills in people, through repetition, a false choice. By relying on hyperboles of best and worst, the critic convinces the audience that one must choose between the two. Critics have their reasons. They might rely on hyperbole because it makes for good entertainment. They might rely on hyperbole because their thought process works that way, and they use those terms in their internal monologues. The answer might lie within a mixture of the two. Although I dislike this practice, I want audiences to know that more exists beyond best or worst. Audiences need to question and consider and ponder and synthesize. They need to know what best and worst mean. I hope to nudge or inspire audiences. I do not want to tell them what to think. I want them to think for themselves. I hope to spark imaginations. Earlier, I mentioned what I called the principle of the first voice and the principle of the loudest voice. One reason audiences accept hyperbole rests in these principles. I admit that I named these principles. I use them mostly as shorthand instead of going through each step of the process. When an argument travels along the same path and hits the same points, the statement of a principle alleviates the repetitiveness. I do not intend to use these principles as gospel. They may prove false after enough time or scrutiny. I would accept criticism and critique of these principles. For the most part, I use the principles for my own purposes. I mention them with my friends, but I never rely on them to prove a point. I use the principles as an explanation behind my analysis. With the principle of the first voice, I find that the first critic of a subject gains more credibility for their timing. The audience, having no other frame of reference for the subject matter, highly values their first criticism and analysis. Then, when more analyses form, the audience compares the new with the first, and in an unfavorable manner, because they still highly value the first. All future analyses must stand against the light of the first. This may happen because of laziness, or because of audiences wanting entertainment more than serious conversation. On a dour note, this may happen because audiences take a selfish view. The first analysis pushes them into knowing. Thanks to the first, they now have more information. They grow attached to the first analysis the same way people grow attached to a favorite stuffed animal or a favorite t-shirt. Regardless of the reason, some people give undue favoritism to the first analysis. With this principle, people believe and defend the first analysis they hear because it was the first. As for the principle of the loudest voice, I find that audiences may agree with an analysis after enough repetition or a loudening of its voice. Audiences will not want to disagree or argue with an analysis because they have heard other people repeat the analysis. Technology has led to amazing benefits regarding communication. It has also created a series of problems. Audiences have access to a nearly unlimited source of information, but tend to wade within familiar waters. Instead of testing and exploring, people resort to burrowing. Personal anecdote that I stripped of explicit detail. I decided to quit social media as a whole after seeing one of my former professors using correlating data as causation. When I explained this problem to a friend, my friend did not understand the difference between correlation and causation. He agreed with the correlating data and therefore dismissed counterarguments. The ability to share and circulate information creates similar problems. A critic makes an analysis, people share that analysis for reasons outside the analysis's quality. People see the expanding presence and believe that they should agree with it. Of course, these two principles do not account for quality. I admit the possibility of good and solid analyses existing. The first and the loudest analyses could show genuine quality. If so, more power to those analyses. My principles focus more on the reception of an analysis rather than the analysis itself. It may sound that I am harsh towards audiences, that I blame them for stupidity. I do not view people as stupid. Instead, I view them as unaware. Not everybody spends their free time dissecting a book or a movie or a video game. They may spend their time in either more productive matters or in other enriching activities. As such, I do not think everybody has the same experience when it comes to criticism and analysis. They do not know something just as I do not know everything. Someone can say whether they liked or didn't like a movie. They can give a video game 5 stars out of 10, but they may not know how to articulate their reasoning. Perhaps my analyses, as random or as pretentious as they may appear, will inspire people to spend a little more time to think. I do not claim to always be right, but I try my best. I do not want a sudden revolution of the mind. I want people to realize the fun of analysis, while also recognizing that analyses can be wrong. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this essay. I expect to have more in the future around the same lines, but for now, this is it. This has been Bennett Durkin, and this has been an essay from my library.